Hello and welcome to the Success Showcase. I'm your host, Eric Lopkin from the Modern Observer Group. And with me, as always, is Chip Januszewski from the Happiness and Success GPS. Chip, how you doing this week?
I'm doing great, Eric. How are you?
I am doing fantastic.
Hopefully, I'm doing this correctly. It's been a while since I've been here.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm sure you'll get right back into the swing of things.
I will. And speaking of swing, I guess that's a great way to introduce our guest.
It is. We have a very musical guest who's had a lot of interesting stories and a great track record going through multiple careers, actually. Like to introduce everybody to Kim Collins. Kim is a flautist who has played with the Hartford Symphony. We've had folks from the Hartford Symphony here before. She has performed with the rock group Kansas, among others, and now she is working at the Connecticut River Valley Chamber, and we are going to talk to her about all of that. So, Kim, welcome.
Thank you very much, Eric and Chip. It's great to be here.
We're glad to have you. So, let's start with your musical career. How did you get started?
Okay, how did I get started? Well, all right. I don't think I really intended for any of this to happen when I was young enough at the age that they would start introducing instruments. I had zero interest at all. So I did not begin when everybody else did. Well, what happened is there were some mighty cute guys playing the saxophone in the band. So at one point I asked my mom if I could play, and she said, sure, you can play an instrument. And I said, I want to play the saxophone. And she looked at there were four of us. I had three other siblings, and she looked at the rental sheet and the purchase sheet, and she said, that one costs too much. Pick the flute or the clarinet. And I said, well, no, thank you, then I don't want to play. And she said, hey, wait a minute now. You made a commitment to this and you are going to play something. So pick one of these, flute or clarinet. And I picked the flute, and it just took off like a shot from there.
The rest is his. So it started as a hopefully social experience, is what you're saying.
That was my intention.
Yeah, I can understand what your mother was talking about. I remember that rental sheet from getting a sax for my son. And yeah, but it tends to rack up.
It does.
So you started with the flute. Did you meet any boys there?
Well, not there in the middle school band, but yeah, one of my boyfriends in high school band. And then, of course, when I went to music school, that's where I met my husband, who is a percussionist. So it worked out for me.
There you go. Yeah.
No, that's wonderful. Obviously, growing up with music all around you is just so wonderful. And as we were talking about before, I got to watch both of my sons' journeys from grade school through both being in the music professional field right now. And I mean, there's nothing like it, having music in your life. So for you being able to perform and to teach and to mentor people and so on and so forth, I'm sure it's been so rewarding to you in so many ways.
Yeah, it has been really great. It's been amazing. I think what is the most important to me and the most amazing part of it is that you get to touch other people. So for me as a mentor, being able to empower somebody else to make a positive change in their life is a really important part of it. And it almost becomes inconsequential that it's music. It doesn't matter that it's the instrument. I kind of feel like I'm teaching life, and it's via the instrument. So, I get to make some really great changes and help people just kind of think about their own selves and the way that they operate, and make corrections and modifications and become better. And then, of course, as a performer, it means more to me when I know that I've touched somebody, that I get some feedback that somebody says that it meant something to them or they enjoyed it.
No, and obviously I was joking a little bit about the social experience part of the thing, but one of the most wonderful things about music, especially when you're new in schools and so on and so forth, is it pulls that group of kids together who are playing together, whether it's being the orchestra or lessons or whatever, and all of a sudden you have something in common to build on. So you automatically are developing a group of friends, a social group, and so on and so forth. And I'm sure that you have a lot of people who you've known literally for your whole life because of through that too.
That is true. Definitely.
So how did you make that transition from I'm going to play the flute to meet some boys to going to music school?
I just really think that for me, the flute became an outlet. It became a really important part of like my own self-soothing, and I was good at it, and it meant so much to me that I couldn't stop. I was a really great student. I was at the top of my class, had a lot of other choices of things that I could do, but I remember saying to my mom, the only thing I think I really want to do is play the flute. And that hadn't really occurred to my parents that we could do that, but we decided to go for it and see what happened. And I've been very, very fortunate that it did work out for me. It's not the case for everybody.
See, that's great. And, what I hope our listeners take away from this is that you discovered this passion completely by accident. So, you never know where new experiences are going to take you.
That is really true. You just don't know.
So I mentioned that you've played with the Hartford Symphony, which, let's face it, when people think of flutes, most people think symphonic music, classical, but you also played with a number of bands, Kansas among them. Tell us a little bit about how you got involved with both of those organizations. I remember talking to you about this and being absolutely surprised because the only rock and roll flautist I ever knew of was with Jethro Tull.
Ian Anderson, yeah.
Yeah.
So I just want to mention that I am not a member of the Hartford Symphony. I have performed with them. The symphony that I have spent the most time with is the Springfield Symphony up in Massachusetts. And I also play with the New Haven Symphony and the Waterbury Symphony. So those are the places that I play. How I got started with that, I think it really just happened in music school. Actually, well, my first gigs were in high school, but there was a contractor who came to an orchestra concert and he heard me play and he found my contact information and he said, "I'd like to hire you." And I started freelancing when I was still in school. So that's how that got started. I was, once again, I just have to keep reflecting on how fortunate I have been that things lined up the way that they did, because that happened by itself. And then what happened following that was organic, right? So you show up someplace, you do a good job, you make good connections, and then you get more work. So
yeah,
thank you.
Curious, being an old rocker, I actually saw Jethro Tull play in the Hartford Civic Center. I'm guessing around 1980. It was a long, long time ago. But the band Kansas and Carry On and all those things, that was a wonderful band too. How did you get connected with Kansas?
Okay, so it wasn't directly through Kansas. It was through a contractor who contracts backup orchestras or backup, musicians for touring groups at the Mohegan Sun. So I started playing, I don't know, they must have had a need at one point. I got a call, and then from then on, I just kept getting called. So I played for a lot of different groups. I played for Yes. I played for Kansas. I played for Josh Groban. the Three Irish Tenors, Peter Cetera, lots of different great experiences. Yeah.
Were most of them on Mohegan Sun?
Most of them were Mohegan Sun, some were at Foxwoods,
Okay.
and there were a couple things at the Bushnell, like Deep Purple, believe it or not, did a symphonic show. It was the loudest thing I've ever heard in my life. And I did that too. So I think every time I do those things, I think, wow, I'm so lucky. Can't believe I get to do this.
I want to see your resume.
So for our listeners who aren't familiar with all of this, most of us have this image of a band touring and they bring all the musicians with them, but how does this work? There's a local person that finds local musicians to back up these major acts.
Yes, it's the same also for some of the national touring Broadway shows, which I play for at the Bushnell. There will be a contractor who's responsible for finding people who can come in on the day of the show. And for the touring bands and things like that, we don't get the music ahead of time. We show up about 3:00 or something like that, and there's the music sitting on the stand, and you've got to be able to pick it up and do it. And you don't really go through the show. You just kind of touch on some things you run through, but some things they just say, yeah, this is going to happen, blah, blah, blah. And then you have dinner and the show happens and you have no idea what's going to happen. But yeah, once again, it's been a blessing. It's been really great to have had the honor of being somebody that somebody trusted to do that.
Yeah, and I think it's a special kind of musician who can do that, because you literally have to pick up different types of music on the fly. You've done this with different types of acts. You personally, though, what's your favorite music?
That's a really tough one. I think there's so many things I love. I really love jazz. I love classical because that's kind of where I got started, but I love Latin music. The flute has an awesome spot in a lot of Latin music. My bucket list is to play in a Latin band.
Nice.
I would love to do that.
Well, you're involved with the Glastonbury Chamber. Maybe there's a networking opportunity to open some doors there.
Yeah, I'll have to try that this week.
We had a guest on a couple of weeks ago. Is a good friend of ours named Stephen King Jr., and he is a member of Soul Sound Review, which is a soul band that's just amazing, and they play all over the place. And obviously, the Music Connections. If you throw that out there, you never know, because there's all kinds of diversity around here as far as bands and things like that goes. So if you're listening out there, Kim's available to be there.
Thank you, Chip.
Okay, there you go.
So, yeah. Okay. So speaking of the Connecticut River Valley Chamber, you recently, almost a year ago, I believe, if not more, joined as their membership director. How does that transition happen?
I think it's something that happened to a lot of people during the pandemic. What had happened prior to the pandemic is I had started a role on staff at the Springfield Symphony, where I was also performing. So I was helping with the events in the role of music librarian. So I would work on, I was a liaison to guest artists and things like that, and the guest conductors, and make sure that everything was together, and kind of a customer service position for the musicians of the orchestra. And during the pandemic, the